Oh.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Jack.
Hi. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to see you.
Nice to
Nice
see
to
you guys.
see you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to moderate this session. For the sake of time, I think we can begin now. My name is Najat Mehdi. I am from Ethiopia. I am advocate for gender justice and also a champion. And I'm happy to see all these honorable speakers who are also young. And I can't wait to see what they are going to say to us. I start by introducing Ulfat Hussein Masibo. She is a passionate Kenyan Muslim feminist and a director of African Muslim Women Action Network with a degree in political science and law and specialized training in gender and Islam. Ulfat works tirelessly to reform family laws in Kenya's Qadi courts, advocate for gender equality, and engage in environmental advocacy. She is also a dynamic steering group member of Side by Side, championing gender justice. Hi, Miss Ulfat, Madam Ulfat.
Hi, how are you?
Am I
Najat?
audible? Hi.
Yes, thank you.
We're so
Thank you.
honored that you are here. Tell us about, is there anything, regarding the title that you want us to know about? What are your thoughts on the title of the webinar? The role of faith in accelerating gender justice.
You are free to give me any title by your preference. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Okay, shall we start on, the first question? As a young Muslim feminist and advocate for gender justice, how do you navigate conversations about women's rights, within faith-based spaces, like, in Islamic context, with the teachings of the Islam? You
Thank you
have
so
10
much.
minutes to answer. There are also 3 questions. I will forward them to you. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and the good question. My name is Ulfa Hussein Masibo. I work with Africa Muslim Women Action Network. We advocate for gender equality and women empowerment in an Islamic perspective. So your question relates to how I relate and how I relate and navigate conversations. First of all, you have to navigate such conversations by engaging Islamic scholars, community leaders, and women by referencing to Quranic verses and hadith that emphasize justice, dignity, and equity for all. Because we are talking about Islam and Sharia. So I will quote a powerful Quranic verse, Quran chapter 2, verse 2 to 8, where it states that, and they women have rights similar to those of men over them in kindness. So here, the verse affirms the principle of reciprocal rights and responsibilities between men and women. I'll also add an hadith. This is the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The best of you are those who are best to their women. This hadith underscores the importance of treating women with kindness, respect, and dignity, emphasizing gender justice within family law. We also use historical examples. For example, the women who played a role in Islamic history during Jahiliyyah periods, who were the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, Khadija binti Huwailid and Aisha binti Abu Bakr, to challenge patriarchal interpretation. So during our dialogues, we emphasize and refer to hadith and Quranic quotes, and also we listen to the concerns addressing misconceptions and create spaces where women can express their realities while reclaiming their rights in Islam. We also refer to human rights instruments, for example, CEDAW, Convention on the Elimination Against Discrimination Against Women. So we have dialogues revolving around Quran, Hadith, and also human rights instruments locally, nationally, and regionally. Thank you, and back to you.
Wow, that is so impressive. From what you have said, to engage those, those who are, engaging the right stakeholders, those who have really power and influence into the community is such a good way to go through your advocacy. And the second question is, your work with the Qadi courts, focuses on reforming family laws. Walk us through that. What progress have you seen so far? And you can also mention the challenges.
Okay, the Qadis Court are our main partners because they have the jurisdiction and mandate to govern and preside over cases concerning family law matters to Islamic court users. Majority are Muslim court users. Through the collaboration with Qadis Court and religious leaders and grassroots women groups, we have seen progress in reforming family laws. We have increased awareness of women's rights and strengthening access to justice. Because before never used to be, there was limited knowledge and maybe limited awareness. So we have tried to increase awareness in our community. In our coastal region, now women are better informed about their rights in marriage, inheritance, and divorce cases. However, the challenges persist there in patriarchal resistance, economic barriers, and limited legal aid services because mostly the court users who access just at the Qadis court are women. So they have limited legal aid services, they have limited economic facilities, and the patriarchal resistance also is a major factor at this court because you'll find major Qadis there. The whole court is full of men Qadis. So sometimes the women might pull back and feel shy or feel inferior to approach such a court. Thank you, and back to you.
How can young Muslims, use their voices to challenge these negative stereotypes, and men dominancy, and also, to have, a buffer state for, women to engage and, speak up?
Yes, the young Muslims in the society have a big role because they're the ones in the space, the Gen Z and young adults. They can enhance this knowledge on understanding Islamic knowledge and gender justice. They can synchronize and use Islamic Sharia to affirm gender justice as through their mosques, perhaps through our programs. There are programs are these programs where people talk, give each other like a preaching or Muslim lessons, Islamic lessons during our meetings at the mosque or even in a community setting setup. Even Muslim student associations can be used in maybe universities. Islamic universities can be instrumental also. We have a few in Kenya who can engage in such. So young Muslim people can also advocate for Islamic knowledge and for gender justice. They can use the Quran Hadith to compare and collaborate the two. We have also curriculum reform and religious studies. We can advocate for the inclusion of gender-sensitive Islamic studies in madrasas, schools and universities to promote balanced understanding of gender roles in Islam. We have a lot of youth nowadays using the media, and they can use that to do storytelling. They can come up with hadith stories on media and share stories of the major women in our history of Islamic history. They can tell stories of the good women who have done good things in leadership, perhaps maybe Lady Aisha, who was one of the wives prophet. They can use this platform to advocate for gender justice and create a platform where people can understand where youth are coming from and how they feel the stories and how it can relate back to the Quran and Hadith. So social media advocacy is vital because they have a very big media representation at that site, and also content creation. It can play a big role. It can create a big role and a new narrative online. We can also have the interfaith dialogues. We can have community engagements where legal and policy reforms are being discussed. We have young lawyers, we have students in schools, and we have Sharia students and community can come together to discuss about these legal frameworks. And we also have many roles the youth can engage in. Can engage in mentorship programs, outreach programs, community development initiatives, and so on, so that this voice can go further from the grassroots to up. I hope I've answered you well, and back to you.
Yes, yes, you have answered well. You have given us this, the steps, which areas, how we can engage even to address this gender justice issue with their context, of course. Miss Ulfat, thank you so much.
Yes.
And Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you, Amada.
You have using your time, properly. Now we go to our young Reverend Mary Mwangi. Hi, Mary. Am I audible to you?
Yes, hi, how are you?
I'm fine. She is a committed clergy member of the African Christian Church in schools, theologies. She is also a theologian and advocate for gender justice and climate justice. As a student leader at St. Paul University School of Theology, Reverend Mwengi actively promotes inclusive faith communities, interfaith dialogues, and environmental stewardship, empowerment young people to be agent for justice and transformation. Thank you for your good work.
I appreciate, thank you.
Thank you. So you also have 10 minutes. How do you respond to this, the role of faith in accelerating gender justice?
All right, thank you so much. Okay, when you talk about faith, there's need to understand that for the young person perspective, for the young people perspective, many young people, their faith is no longer just about doctrine or tradition. but about aligning with the values that address real-world injustices. And that is what drives them. And there is a great shift and a dynamic change for what they thought earlier, that is loyal to personal spirituality, rigid hierarchy to participatory leadership, and even from offline summons to digital engagement. For the young people, the issues like gender justice, climate justice, and fight against corruption are at the heart of this shift. When you talk about many young people, they feel that traditional religion institutions remain silent or complicit in these struggles, pushing them to seek spiritual spaces that actively engage in social transformation. For young people, they are not abandoning faith. They are rejecting faith spaces that fail to embody the justice and integrity they seek. Back to you.
Thank you, Reverend. And my question to you is, in spaces like male dominated, especially on, when you go up to the hierarchy, how do we create real inclusion for young women in this, leadership?
All right, thank you so much. When you talk about faith spaces, this is a fact that it remains to be mostly male-dominated, a reality that is not simply a historical relic, but an ongoing crisis of systemic justice. There's need to address this, not just a mere accommodation or symbolic gesture. It is a radical structural transformation. When you talk about how we can create real inclusion for young women in leadership, we are talking about being intentional inclusion. Inclusion does not happen by accident. The structures that uphold male dominance in faith institutions must be intentionally disrupted and rebuilt. We talk about a paradigm shift. This means we have to challenge theological justification for exclusion. We have many faith traditions misusing scripture and doctrine to justify male leadership. And also, when you talk about inclusion, we are talking about a change of policy, not just as an afterthought. Faith institution must establish mandated leadership quotas. And there is a strong verse in Galatians 3:28 that reminds us there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither nor slave nor free, male nor female. We are all one in Christ Jesus. When you talk about another part, it is beyond tokenism. When you talk about inclusion of women, it is not just appointing of few women into visible but powerless position. It is a strategy of appeasement, not transformation. There's one great king, Martin Luther, who always said, shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. So when you talk about tokenism, it allows institutions to claim progress while maintaining male hegemony. So we are talking about power redistribution, breaking the glass pulpit, giving the women that role to serve, because God created them for a reason, and what He created, it was good. Thank you. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. And what stuck with me is, what struck me from what you have said is, meaningful and intentional inclusion. Yes, not for just for the sake of, to fill the figure. That really stood out for me.
Thank you.
And my other question for you is, like the traditional religious faith spaces have become, not attractive for the youth. So is there any suggestions or any change that it should be put for faith institutions to remain relevant to the youth?
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. Fact is, many African youths, they feel increasingly disconnected from faith institutions. This is not necessarily a rejection from spirituality, but rather a frustration with how traditional religious spaces operate. Faith institutions often seem rigid, hierarchical, disconnected from the youth realities, and slow to engage in critical conversation on social justice, identity, and digital culture. I'll use a case study of Africa instituted churches, because that is where I basically work from. They emerged as a response of colonial Christianity, making faith contextual and inclusive of African realities. However, today, even these institutions struggle to retain the youth who seek spirituality outside organized religion. So when you talk about how they can what must change for them to remain relevant. We're talking about breaking institutional rigidity, a shift from hierarchy to participation. This includes youth inclusion in decision making, not just talking about we have youth leaders, and I put that one in quotes, and giving them that separate roles, but including them, helping them give real authority in church councils, policy makings, and even theological discourses. There's also the part of decolonizing worship and theology. I know that many churches still hold the Western missionary tradition of how they worship, but making young people feel alienated from their own culture identity. Faith then must be contextual and relevant. There's also the part of engaging in social justice. African youth are engaged in social movement, and this is very true because they are working with issues that really relate with them. When we talk about climate justice, that is something they can feel, they can touch. Gender justice, that is something that is very relevant to them. And for this faith institution to be relevant, it is good they engage in issues of social justice. And that one must change when the faith leaders take a stand. Churches that stay neutral on injustice risk the losing credibility among young people. And a recent case study was from the Gen Z's protest in 2023-2024. During this time, Kenyans youth led protests against police brutality and economic injustices. And around this time, the churches that were relevant all kept silent. They risked a number of, and they would talk of not being related to that because they are silent on issues of social injustice. That is what I think. And also, we can talk about making faith spaces digitally engaging. Where most people consume content online, yet faith institutions lag behind in digital engagement. So for this faith institution to continue remaining very relevant, it's good to change, to shift from preaching to engagement, investing in digital ministries because young people are consuming so much from online. There is the TikTok, there is the Instagram, and all that.
Social
We cannot,
media.
yes, and we cannot just put away from that. So it's good for them to engage in these digital spaces. Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of digital spaces,
Yeah, you're right.
on social media, they shape the conversation on gender justice.
Very true.
They have very, big influence on the youth. Hence, the Gen Zs in most young people use social media. So how can we use, as a phase actor, the digital spaces to advocate for, gender justice in phase manner?
Okay. When you talk about that, we talked about intentional movement, intentional working, and intentional engagement with young people. It has come to a point of now moving away from where we are and going down to them, understanding what they do. They are in X spaces, understanding the language of X. Then from that time, we can work on something, crafting something that will help them relate with us. When you talk about, I know they consume a lot of things, and we cannot take away that from them, but we can do our own way of having, let's say, letting them know that we are there, we can listen, and we also have a say in something so that they may not drift or shift away from whatever is right. Because not all information is right, but they continue consuming them. So for faith actors, a call would be being intentional in exactly what we want. When you talk about an issue of social justice, it is there, it is online, and we are doing the right way so that they may help identify with it.
Now that's well said. Hajiyat Ulfat, do you want to add something on this, on the social spaces? You said something before.
Yes, the social spaces play a big role where youth, amongst the youth, there's a huge following. We have content creators. We can have young Islamic scholars, male or female, be on these spaces and be sharing the best perspective of Islamic history, Islamic Sharia, perhaps discuss about the rights of Muslim women in Islam, discuss about the role of women in Islam, perhaps tackle leadership in Islam, so that the young Muslim viewers or followers can listen and benefit. So they can have discussions, maybe podcast, for example, where a young Islamic scholar or even the middle-aged ones are invited over to expound on some controversies which are very controversial discussions, which are even confusing to ourselves and even the people of other faith. So this one can give a continuance of progressive education online, and also be having champions online again that advocate for such rights. So if we have discussions talking about, for example, Qadis Court, what they do, the roles of Qadis Court. So a young Muslim woman or man somewhere in the northern eastern can be aware of this role. Perhaps maybe they assume this role is just judiciary or just an Islamic court. They'll have they will know more about the Islamic court. They'll know how the Qadis court operate and so forth, and the services provided, and they'll be able to approach it with a great confidence. And back to you.
Thank you for that addition. Hence, it is a program for all. It needs collective efforts in order to stop this problem, or advocate for more gender justice practice. Thank you, Mary. Now I go to Rauda. Rauda Muhammad, am I audible to you?
Yes, you're audible.
Rauda is an inspiring executive director of Desire Youth Initiative, and an organization dedicated to empowering grassroots women in addressing gender-based violence and femicide. Rauda leads in impactful awareness campaigns, peace walks, government advocacy efforts. She focuses on economic empowerment and financial independence for women in her community. What a good work, Rauda. I really appreciate what you've been doing. I want you to share with us, how you see the role of faith in accelerating gender justice, and give us a general overview of, your progress on what you do. Rauda?
I have lost you. Can you repeat, please?
Can you give us overview view of, and your progress from what you've been doing? Hence, on your bio, it says a lot. It's such an inspiring. Give us an overview of, what you've been doing, and, give us, your perspective, how phase, accelerates gender justice. Am I audible to you now? Rauda? Ruwaida Muhammad?
Repeat again, please.
Can you share with us, your perspective on the role of faith in accelerating gender justice, together with the progress that you have been doing through your work?
By organization. As organization, we do recognize the importance of stakeholders' involvement in all the aspects of our work, particularly on sexual reproductive health rights. This is no different when it comes to advocacy measures against harmful practices such as FGM that are cultural by nature but deemed religiously due to misinterpretation. hence why the involvement of religious leaders is key. If we ever want to eradicate practice of FGM, it is important to firstly engage religious leaders in conversation to understand the correct interpretation of FGM from the religious scriptures and texts. After which engagement of religious leaders in advocacy field and effort to further strengthen the understanding on how impact policies and working together to change the perspective and narrative around the sexual reproductive health rights guided from a religious point of view. Considering the impact over years that religious has had in shaping lives, policies, and law.
Interesting. Have you ever encountered, or be in contact with Hajiat Ulfat? Since what you do and what she do, is almost similar. So, is there any collaboration amongst you two, or any idea that you have? This is the space for collaboration.
We haven't been collaborate yet.
It's because what you do is when you advocate for the harms of FGM, it also touches the religious perspective and religious scripture teachings in the family law. The Hajiat Ulfat has been working on that, and I think it's good for you to discuss later on this. And I also want to ask you, as a leader from an indigenous and marginalized community, what unique challenges have you witnessed in, especially on adolescent girls and women's face? How can faith-based organization better support these women?
There's limited male inclusion, misconception on matters to do with sexual reproductive health rights, particularly menstrual hygiene, is a female-dominated field. Hence, women would lack support from either their husband or fathers, which essentially, especially in the development stage of a young adolescent girls. Early and forced marriage, that an equal effect girls in marginalized community. These marriages often justify using religious or cultural agreements, which male elders and religious leaders holding significant influence over marriage customs. Many families, particularly in economically disadvantaged area, view girls as an economic asset and marry them off to easy financial burden. Mental health challenge that are byproduct of suppression of their human rights is a key challenge that further leads to poor decision making. How can faith-based organization better support them?
Yeah.
Faith-based organization have a crucial role to play in addressing this challenge. Firstly, programs that train male champion on menstrual hygiene, such as father or elder brother, can create a more supportive environment for young girls and shift the perception that menstruation is only a woman issue. Uh, Faith organization can also advocate for girls' education as a religious and moral priority, emphasizing that keeping girls in school align with values of dignity, justice, and a community well-being. Economic empowerment is a key strategy for uplifting adolescent girls and women in marginalized communities. Faith groups can facilitate vocational training, microfinance opportunity, and skill development programs tailored to the need of the young women.
Mm. Thank you for that. Hajiat Ulfat, do you have anything to say on this? Any comments?
Yes, maybe to add on the inclusion and partnerships with the Islamic scholars during interfaith community dialogue so that we can have cross-learning
Yes.
Opportunities so that we can learn from each other and also address the misconceptions and the narratives that are perceived differently with amongst ourselves and people of the other faith. Back to you.
Thank you on that. Ruwaida, how do you engage religious and community leaders in these conversations, while doing your work?
Sasa nishapotea. Wala nishapotea.
Ruwaida? Am I audible to you? Ruwaida? I think we will go back to her. You know, on our way, on our work of doing this gender justice advocacy, we need allies, male allies.
I'm back.
Now here we have Reverend Godfrey Owino. Hi, Reverend Godfrey.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Glad to have you in
Hi.
this space to talk about, gender
Sasa ninapotea.
justice.
Sorry.
I'm back.
We're honored for you to be here. We will come back to you, Ruwaida. Reverend Godfrey,
Yes.
thank you. We're
Can you hear
honored
me?
for you to be here. We need, people like you to be our allies on advocating for gender justice.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my perspectives.
Thank you. Reverend Godfrey is a dedicated Anglican priest, a PhD candidate and adjunct lecturer at St. Paul's University, Kenya. He is also a specialized in systemic theology, eco-theology, gender theology, and public health concerns, including GBV, teenage pregnancy, and HIV/AIDS. He is also a valued member of Circle for Concerned African Women Theologians, advancing for adolescents and young people's sexual and reproductive health rights. I think all of us here, have similar background. All of you, almost all of you, can work collaboratively in addressing GBV issues as well as ensuring gender justice. Thank you for Reverend Godfrey to be here again. I want to ask you, what drives you for you to join this conversation with us?
Thank you so much, Ijata. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this space with Ulfat, Mary, and Ruweda. And before I answer your question, I want to extend my best wishes to my Muslim siblings who are going through the holy month of Ramadan. I say to them, Ramadan Kareem. And to my Christian
Thank you,
siblings,
Ramadan Kareem.
thank you. And to my Christian siblings who are also beginning their Lent season today through the Ash Wednesday, I wish them also a happy reflective Lenten season. And now, because this is premised around International Women's Day, I also want to wish all women in the space a happy International Women's Day, although coming up on 8th. And so back to your question, what drives me or what brings me into this space? All the work we do, I am glad to work with the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, and part of our team is in the webinar, and I'm glad to work with them. But what drives me here is what we see about faith and justice. And there are, across Africa, for example, if you do a clear survey, there are 4 models of the way faith interacts with justice, including gender justice. Number 1, there is faith that is complicit, faith that is like an enabler of injustice. Number 2, there is faith that is conforming, basically what I would call a passive observer, the one who does not want to do anything about it because they think it is not in the space of faith, it is something social and political. Number 3, there is faith that is confronting what people call in the Christian space, the prophetic witness, faith that wants to change the way issues are, faith that wants to talk about injustice and bring transformation towards justice and inclusivity. Number 4, there is faith that is comforting, the one that wants to heal the brokenhearted. And so as a priest and somebody working in gender and SRHR spaces, I see this four as something that needs our attention, and ask question, why is faith complicit? Why is faith conforming to injustice? And turn to the other side. Can we practice faith that is confronting, faith that is comforting? So I come to this space to express the way my faith needs to be confronting injustice, confronting systems that enable it, including patriarchy, confronting capitalism that is a conspirator with patriarchy, and confronting all these things that enable injustice. Number two is providing comfort, because injustice causes wounding. People are wounded. You see gender-based violence as a product of injustice. You see broken families as a product of injustice. You see loss of lives as a product of injustice. And so how do we bring faith as a healing balm into that space? So I am interested, one, to bring faith that confronts, two, to bring faith that is comforting. But also as a man, our societies have given me privilege. Patriarchy has given me privilege. And how do I want to use my privilege? I want to use my privilege to ensure that my siblings who are women and girls and all people in their diversity, that all of them, because as a man, my culture and sometimes my religion gives me privilege, how do I use that privilege to ensure that women and girls and children and people who are marginalized in that space do not suffer? So I bring those perspectives, I bring those thoughts, I bring those actions and those resources that my faith has to this conversation. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you for leading by example, and how faith communities play, a more active role in tackling these social issues, like amongst adolescents and young people.
Of course, we know that some of these conversations around adolescents and young people's SRHR, which include gender equality and gender justice, has been difficult conversation in faith spaces, basically because of religious text. And I'm very glad that my colleague Ulfat was able to explain to us some text from the Holy Quran and even the Hadith, and explaining to us how that can be used to propagate justice. But this conversation is difficult conversation. And so in this conversation about gender justice, what can faith contribute? What can faith actors, both Muslim, Christian, and also traditional African faith, what can they contribute? Number one, a safe and supportive space where every story can be told, every reality can be accepted and believed, and every possibility nurtured. I will repeat that because I think that's the main thing I want to say for this conversation. Every story, every reality, a space where every story is accepted, is believed, is told, that we are able to, for example, talk about a girl can come to my faith space as a church and say, I was sexually abused by a member of the church, and I will not say no. I will believe her story and investigate. I will not assume that my church is a place of holy people and a child cannot be defiled, for example. I want to believe her story. I want to believe her reality and make a step further. What actions do I need to take? So for me, in terms of gender justice, in terms of SRHR for adolescents and young people, girls and boys, church and faith spaces need to be safe, supportive spaces where every story can be told, can be believed, and every possibility nurtured. Number two, faith spaces use one approach. In talking about, for example, gender justice, talking about SRHR as you've asked, faith uses only one approach, which is value-based. And they say, our scriptures say, our church believes, our Islamic traditions, this is how we are taught, this is how we are trained to become good Muslims, good Christians, or good traditional religious practitioners. And value-based approach is not enough because sometimes values are not shared. We need to invite faith spaces to move beyond value-based approach to justice and to SRHR inclusion, things like that, to other approaches. For example, a health-based approach. And number two, a right-based approach. Why health? Because I've said up there before that injustice issues bring about woundedness, bring about health challenges and problems, including mental health. And so if you only talk about values, we may ignore very important aspects of mental health or physical health challenges. And so a health-based approach will enable faith spaces to go beyond values and look at real things. Number two, right-based approach. Right-based approach will enable the faith spaces to partner with people. I am glad to see Rueda here, somebody working from an activist, but also indigenous community perspective. How can we partner with them? It's only when we take a right-based approach to know that everybody has equal rights, but our contexts make us unequal. That, for example, if I come from a remote part in Turkana, I am not able to access and speak like somebody who comes from Nairobi like myself. So a right-based approach would ensure that I talk about equality, that all of us, regardless of where we come from, can speak. So the church needs to go, and faith needs to go beyond value-based approach to justice and to SRHR inclusion, to health-based and right-based approach. And finally, an intersectional approach, looking at identity, looking at context, looking at reality. So then the answer that we find produces a holistic response to realities and challenges that people have, not only women and girls, but also people from different contexts of society. Back to you.
Thank you so much. As a religious leader, how do you navigate and challenge traditional interpretation of religious scriptures, religious traditions? How do you navigate that?
Thank you so much. And I will pick the wisdom of my other colleagues, both through whether I think also Mary said it and Ulfat said it. I think it's Ulfat who talked about paying attention to the wisdom that is within our scriptures. I think Mary talked about the colonial approach. And I want to borrow into that and say, navigating it for me begins from, many Kenyans may understand the word bottom-up approach. And I don't talk about politics here. What I mean by bottom-up approach is that I want to begin from lived reality. What Gen Zs would say, situation qua ground, what is happening in the ground, or where people are, where rubber meets the road. So lived reality, I begin from lived reality. What are the statistics? I say Kenya, for example, has become, after India, Kenya is one of the heaviest contributors of gender-based deaths, femicide. Globally, I think India leads, which is a bad situation, but Kenya in Africa leads the least in statistics of girls who are killed only because they are girls. And so I begin from lived reality. There is statistics provided by the government, by activists, by health departments, by NGOs. There is real statistics about gender-based violence, about teenage pregnancy, about HIV, about inequalities. I need, as a faith leader, to begin from that reality. That is the only way I'm able to navigate the challenges, because then if I begin from reality, reality does not dictate whether I'm a Muslim or a Christian. Reality is reality. Today, if we had flood, for example, it doesn't affect only Christians like me. It affects my brother and sister who's a Muslim or a traditional religious practitioner. And so when I begin from reality, it removes the boundaries, it removes the borders, it removes the fences that we put to deny people space to thrive. And so for me, I normally begin from a lived reality, what Kenyans would call bottom-up approach, or what Gen Zs in Kenya would call situation qua ground. And then that reality informs the way I read scripture. That reality informs the way I practice my faith, the way I preach my faith. That reality informs that there is increasing case of femicide in Kenya. How do I need to make my faith a faith that confronts femicide? Number two, and the last one, I pay attention to the wisdom of our mothers. I work for the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, and some of the members are in this webinar. And there is a lot of wisdom that they have built over time, historically since 1989, dealing with situations of pandemics, situations of violence, situations of patriarchy. And over time, there has been transformation. And so paying attention to their wisdom, how did they interpret scriptures? How did they interpret culture? How did they propagate interfaith conversations that a Muslim and a Christian and somebody else can sit together as sisters, as siblings, and forge a way forward for justice. So that wisdom is important for me to navigate that space. So number one is lived reality. Number two is to pay attention to the wisdom that is before us of our mothers and also our fathers. Back to you.
Starting from lived reality, what a powerful sentence. When you start from the lived reality and empower those who survivors of this GBV, it
Yeah.
will make more, it will amplify the voices of the voiceless. Thank you all. I have one question for you all. I want you to answer this. Is there any initiative that you want to take after this webinar? Since now I think you get to know each other either. I think there are many ways that you can work together collectively towards, achieving, ensuring gender justice in our communities. Is there any initiative that you want to take?
Do I begin?
Of course.
Okay, thank you, Nejit. I think the first thing is to thank Faith to Action for organizing this very important conversation that is interfaith. And so one thing that I will begin is to appreciate this, but also to pray that this does not become a one-time event. How can we do this more and more, both in webinars like this, but also in real places that we are able to visit through where she works and talk this conversation. I am able to go to Mary Mwangi's African Independent Church and talk about this conversation. So for me, it's about the digital gap that other people will be able to do digital conversations like this, but majority of people may not. So can we also go to the ground where people work, where Mary is, where I am, where Rueda is, where Ulfat is, and we bring all these voices together. So collaboration at the grassroots level, where I said collaboration at the place of lived reality, and to move on with this. But number two, and which I think is important, is to call our religious leaders to accountability. And I think it's Mary who mentioned it, and I think also Ulfat, about what happened in Kenya last year for the Gen Zs. That one thing they did is that they called the faith spaces into accountability. What are you doing? Why are you complicit? Why are you supporting injustice? And so calling our faith leaders into accountability, that our faith spaces need to be what they should be, a place of propagating love, justice, wellness, and fairness. And in so doing, it requires that we support each other, mental health, that sometimes calling the powerful into accountability is difficult. It comes with a backlash. How do we address backlash? Faith to Action can come, for example, with frameworks of dealing with backlash. Because if you have an advocate and someone to speak this real conversation, sometimes there's backlash. Do we have frameworks to support them? So I think having a group of cohorts like us to support each other and to support people doing this work, because sometimes it comes with a huge mental challenges. Yeah, I would say that for now and get back
Thank
to my
you for
comments.
the initiative. We look forward for the collaboration that you take the initiative to with Reverend Mary. We look forward to that. Hajiat Ulfat, you want to take any initiative?
Yes, thank you so much, Najat. There's an aspect of us being an interfaith. We are organizations from interfaith groups and intrafaith amongst ourselves. Some are here,
Yes.
we are representing. So if we have this collaboration of interfaith dialogues, interfaith conversations, we can use platforms like universities. For example, we have common universities maybe in Kilifi County, in Mombasa County, and other counties that my colleagues are coming from, maybe Nairobi, Limuru, and so forth. So these interfaith discussions and dialogues will bring forth the misconceptions, discuss the controversies in both religions, and scholars will be able to echo out the realities on the books as the book states, and the realities on the ground, and how do we synchronize the two of them. So the youth will be engaged in such platforms and also we'll have a commonality in thought after such discussions, and they'll bring up their challenges in such discussions, because we might assume they have such challenges and maybe they have more to what we can see with our visible eyes. Thank you, and back to you.
So looking forward to your interface dialogue in universities, common universities in different countries that you have mentioned. Looking forward to that. And I go to Miss Mary. Any initiative that you want to take on?
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate that we've had this wonderful conversation. And truth be told, that this was not just a one-day event. I know it's a conversation that will go forward. And what I look forward to is having more collaboration with people that we've had interaction with on this webinar. And talking about confronting the faith that we once believed, the interaction we've had and the insight that I think it's Rev Adera is the one who has brought it up, confronting the faith that we have, whether it is comforting, confronting and stuff. That will be an initiative going forward. And also even paying attention to the wisdom that is already there. He has talked about the Circle of Concerned Women Theologian. I still believe there is still so much more to learn. And this is a process that has begun. I appreciate. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to that initiative. We want to see what you guys are doing, in collaboration. And as well, I want to ask Ruwaida Muhammad, what are the initiatives that you want to take on?
Yes, I look forward to have more interaction
After
with
this
all the
conversation.
speakers, and I'm looking forward to have more collaboration and coordination to have such initiative or such information to integrate them at the grassroots level with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Hence, it's this problem, a problem for a woman is also a problem for a man, hence we are living, we are a social animal. So we have to, tackle our problems collectively. So therefore, I look forward and Face to Action will support with the framework that you have asked, Mr. Reverend. We look forward to your collaboration. Time is against us. Thank you so much. Thank you for your, meaningful contribution to this amazing commemorating International Women's Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Ramadan
having us.
Mubarak for you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
Nice to see you again, virtually, Godfrey.
Yes, yes.
After
Looking forward. Yeah, asante.
Asante, bye.